Just watched Happy Gilmore 2, and unfortunately, that was a train wreck. I'm a big fan of Happy Gilmore, the original film. I think it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my life. It's one of my all-time favorite comedy films, but this one just completely misses the mark, and this is a sequel that never should have happened. For starters, in general, comedy films have been going through kind of a lull in the past decade or so, or maybe even more. And personally, I just think it's hard to make comedy films in today's day and age. And there's a number of reasonings to that. It's just a different world we live in now. A lot of jokes you seem to can't go as aggressively in these movies anymore. But also another reason is Adam Sandler, as much as I like him, I think his comedy and his type of humor kind of had a time period back in the 90s where it worked. And then over time, that kind of goofy nature that's pretty prevalent in all of his comedy films overextends its welcome after a while, and it feels like the same bit again and again and again. And I actually think the plot in this movie is fairly serviceable. Essentially, Happy Gilmore has a tragic event happen to him, turns him into this alcoholic. He abandons golf. He has 5 kids. He essentially is trying to put his daughter into a very expensive ballet school in Paris. So that has to make him return to the sport and try to get a bunch of money quickly. And there actually are some funny bits towards the beginning of the movie when it focuses on golf and when Happy's relearning the sport. But after that, and it gets towards the second half, the film for me just becomes pretty unbearable to watch. It's just essentially a massive cameo fest. And when I say massive cameo fest, there's random people showing up all over the place. From Travis Kelce to Guy Fieri to Reggie Bush. Not that they necessarily don't fit in this type of movie, but it just becomes so much after a while that it just becomes overbearing. And it got to a point for me where about halfway through, anybody who was coming on screen that I didn't recognize, I just assumed that they were famous from somewhere, whether it was YouTube or sports or specific golfers. I just assumed it was going to be a cameo of somebody. And then after the cameo fest, it just becomes this kind of like Top Golf gimmicky popcorn movie. The other golfer group that they're trying to go up against, they've solved this kind of way, this surgical way to make everybody drive the ball even longer than Happy now. But then once everybody's getting to the tee box, and then that group who's surgically altered themselves who can drive the ball really far now, they start teeing off, then the golf balls start glowing and you see these colors going, following their balls everywhere. So it becomes very video game like. And then when you throw it on top of the cameos all over the place, for me, again, it just becomes completely unwatchable. The golf games even turn gimmicky. There is some real world precedent here with the PGA and the LIV. So I think that's the angle that they're kind of trying to go off of, with Happy having to recruit current golf stars in the real world and then having them compete against these surgically altered guys in this video game type of, golf league that's trying to come up. But again, it just becomes too popcorn bubblegummy video game. And then after that, mixed in between is a lot of callback jokes from the original movie. And granted, there was going to be a couple of them, but they all just feel so forced, brought into the picture. It's almost kind of like Happy's looking at the camera, or the people are looking at the camera telling you that the joke is going to come, and then they run up and reenact it, and it just doesn't feel authentic at all. And I actually think a decent enough plot line could have been if they just kept it as Happy having to return to the sport to help his daughter fund her ballet school in Paris, and then keep it really, without the bubblegum golf stuff that it turns into, keep it pretty as close you can to normal golf as you did with the original, and have Happy essentially have to compete with the DeChambeaus, the Rory McIlroys, the Scotty Schefflers, the Brooks Koepka, guys who can actually really drive the ball off the tee and kind of nullify Happy's advantage that he had in the original film, where he's driving the ball 400 plus yards. And I think it would have worked really well if you had Shooter caddying Happy while he's trying to essentially beat this new tour of really real world golfers. And I think you could have finagled some of those callback jokes into this movie a lot better. But again, once it just became the massive cameo fest and then the video game like golf nature, everything just felt so forced, out of place. And honestly, it feels like a Netflix movie that you watch for a weekend that does really good numbers, and then it's just lost into the Netflix ether, never to be watched again. So unfortunately, I wanted to give this movie a try. I wanted to give it a shot. It's just not very good. Another bad legacy sequel, comedy legacy sequel that shouldn't have happened. One of probably the worst movies I've seen of the year. It pains me to say that again as a Happy Gilmore original fan, but it is what it is.